All right, it's 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call to order the work session of the East Grand Forks City Council for Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Please turn on your microphones, and would the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Mark Olstead, Council President Brian Larson.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riopel.
Here.
Council Members Tammy Schumacher.
Here.
Ben Pukshavinsky.
Present.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Donald Casemy. And Karen Peterson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. We've got a long agenda tonight, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first item here is a review of bid results of the 2026 City Project Number 1 Point Bridge Rehabilitation, SP 119-113-008. And we'll turn that over to Mr. Emery.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Council. So we did open bids yesterday for, again, the 2026 Point Bridge Rehabilitation Project. We did receive a total of 3 bids. With the bids, there was documents that need to be submitted as part of the condition of the bid. You know, such things as like your bid bond, non-collusion affidavit, and a few other forms. The one bidder did not submit 2 pieces of that documentation that were required to be submitted, so with that, we did not read his bid. So with that, I did provide you guys with a bid tabulation. Right now, we were estimating about $2.26 million. The low bid came in at about $2.75 million, so approximately about $494,000 over budget, or 22% approximately. The next bidder was about $724,000 higher than the low bid. So again, probably not terrible bids, large project. I did, at the bottom of the tabulation page, I kind of broke down by city. If you remember, Grand Forks is paying for, let's just say roughly half of the cost. So I did break down, as you can see, the city's share would be $1,499,237, and then Grand Forks share would be $1,259,363 essentially. Again, the big difference is there is we have the approach work that we would need to do on the East Grand Forks side, and again, that would be 100% East Grand Forks city cost. There was kind of an alternate pedestrian route, so we have to, over on the Grand Forks side, we have to close down their bike trail that comes underneath the bridge. So we added in there to put in a kind of an alternate pedestrian route, and that came in at about $47,500. So that cost, we gave that 100% to the city of Grand Forks. So on your kind of on the RCA now, I did kind of try to give you again just kind of a reminder of the funding breakdown. Again, federal funding for East Grand Forks is $1,080,000. At that time, like the MnDOT state aid construction funds, based on as-bid cost now, that amount would go to about $527,650, and then North Dakota DOT was going to supply or furnish $920,000. So I guess then Grand Forks, I should have penciled that in. Whatever the additional $250,000, whatever it is there, they would have to cover their share again to come up with the $1,259,000. So, and then one bit of information I provided. I know we've talked about this before, but on the second page, I kind of provided you guys an estimate of the city's state aid allocation budget. And if you look under 2026, again, we had our federal project penciled in there. So now I did put in, the estimated construction costs. Again, East Grand Forks share, that $1,499,000. Actually added into that number the engineering costs. So we'd have essentially East Grand Forks total project cost would be about $1.6 million. Pull the $1,080,000 out of that. Again, that would leave $527,650. So, and again, this is shifted a little bit now with construction happening in 2027 versus 2027. But regardless, you can see we had a remaining balance of about $542,424.
Steve, can you check to make sure your microphone's on?
What's that?
Your microphone?
Yep.
It is on? Okay. Mayor texted, so, okay. Thank you.
Then we have, like next year, 2027, we do have kind of the Demers Avenue Street and 80 Improvement Project. 2028, we don't have any projects currently anticipated. And then in 2029, again, MnDOT's looking to come in and do the work on Trunk Highway 2B. The last time we had brought this forward for the traffic signal replacements at like Cabela's, Demers and 4th, and then I think also, there's 2 sets of traffic signals in there. So long story short, I think we originally had about 1.1 million penciled in, which we thought could ultimately be city cost. We just found out kind of from MnDOT today that, remember when they were here, they were talking about legislation being passed and any work on a trunk highway system, it was going to be kind of capped. So we did find out now that legislation did get approved, and the city of East Grand Forks cost will be capped at like $78,000. So that freed up a lot. So basically, as you can see, under the 2029 project, kind of to the far right there, I did pencil in $78,000, which again, if you go all the way to the right, we'd have a remaining balance of 1.5. Again, then if we look at a federal project 2030, and then we also have, just kind of keeping in mind those traffic signals south of the Louis Murray at some point are going to have to be replaced. So again, I guess what I was trying to show there, with the change in cost contribution, especially on that Trunk Highway 2B, our state aid construction balance is really looking good for what we see for future projects too. So I think that's kind of important too, just so you are aware. One thing, just today, we had to send to Tyzac Concrete, the low bidder, a letter of the documentation that they need to submit within the 5 business days now, that they need to submit to the Office of Civil Rights to make sure that during the bidding process they kind of met all the DBE requirements and such. So that letter went out today, hoping, in the next, I would say the next week or 2 to get basically approval, clearance from Office of Civil Rights to, move ahead with potentially awarding the contract to Tyzac. But again, we're going to have to get that clearance before the council can make an award. So, and then the other thing, Tyzac, they've been around a long time, but from what I understand, they've just gotten more into the bridge type work the last couple years, I believe. So I did ask them today, requested from them that they provide us with a kind of list of recent projects they've completed along with references so we can do some kind of background work on them. So at this time, I guess I really wouldn't have maybe a recommendation. I'd like to check references, make sure we get the clearance from Office of Civil Rights. So I guess maybe just open it up for questions.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any questions for Mr. Emery on the results of the bid or any of the comments thus far? Mr. Helms?
Thank you. Do you have a starting date for this now for sure?
We had a starting date now of like May of 2027, with a completion date at the end of August of 2027.
And this bid will, they know that this will carry through to that
Yep,
time? Right?
yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Emery? Okay, I see none. Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 2 then. Request to advertise for fire chief position opening and name Assistant Chief Paul Hansen the interim chief. We'll start with Mr. Huttunen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, council members. As detailed in the council agenda item, Chief Bushy gave us his notice of plans for retirement, indicating his last day will be Thursday, June 25th. So that's kind of first part of the agenda is discussion on the advertisement and seeking approval to post the position for a replacement. In the RCA, I did kind of detail what a proposed timeline would look like for advertisement of the chief's position. Assuming it gets approval at the council meeting next Tuesday, and we start advertising the day following, planning about a 30-day advertisement period. We would be into the late part of June before the advertisement closes, using civil service for that first round of interviews. The earliest that could happen would be after the 4th of July, the week of July 6th. Final interviews, hopefully I'd get some feedback from all of you on, again, as we talked with the Park and Rec Superintendent, on how you'd like to see interviews conducted for that, if you want the full council's involvement or delegate that to staff or some version of both. The week of July 6th or after, and then kind of targeting the July 21st City Council approval of a permanent replacement for the fire chief. So that said, and knowing that time horizon, kind of probably a best case scenario with the advertisement period and the civil service process, seeing there's going to be a period of time where there'd be a lapse after the chief's final day. I think it'd be good of us to put an interim chief in place. I've met with Chief Bushy and with Assistant Chief Hansen about this. Assistant Chief Hansen has been with the department since 2006 and is up on many of the required certifications, including the Certified Emergency Manager, and I think is well positioned to be able to lead the department in the interim. So would seek approval of naming him the interim chief until the full replacement is hired.
All right, thanks, Reid. Any questions from the council members for Reid on the interim chief or the selection process? Are you looking for feedback from us right now, Reid, regarding the selection committee, or is it staff? Is there council members?
I'd certainly take it, but if it's something you all want to think over and we can discuss at another time, I'm comfortable with that as well. We have some time.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. Any other questions on this agenda item? Okay, I see none. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 3 then. Consider approving lease agreement with SJA Thunder Corporation doing business as Mike's Pizza and Pub with the City of East Grand Forks on parcel number 83.00813. Ms. Brockling.
Good evening, Council. Let's see, Mike's Pizza, we spoke with them since their lease is expiring later this month to see if they're interested in renewing, and they are. They love being here. They spoke very highly of our staff who have taken good care of the building. So the EDA Loan Committee and regular board met and decided on keeping the rent flat for the next 5 years with the opportunity to review an increase to see just that they are able to stay in town. The building does have revenues that meet or exceeds the expenses, so we were able to do that.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Any questions or comments for Maggie on the lease? We'll start with Mr. Riopel.
Just curious, if they're paying $3,900 a month, is it possible for us to maybe sell that portion of the building to them?
That's a great question. I will add that to our EDA discussion and ask the owner if there's any interest in buying it. I think it wants.
3,900 go a long ways towards a.
Yeah, some equity.
There eventually.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation.
I brought it up to Ron. He better ask a question.
I think it's a great idea. We'd like to get some feedback from the business owner and the EDA.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Helms.
Just a comment, I like the idea of keeping it flat so we keep business in East Grand Forks. We don't need to get rid of it anymore, so I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments for Maggie here on the lease with Mike's Pizza? Okay, I see none. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Maggie, if you'll stay up here, looks like you've got the next couple. The next one here is item number 4, TIF and tax abatement addition into existing business subsidies policies. Ms. Brockling.
Right. So thank you for the opportunity to present on this. It appears the last time we did a TIF district was in 1988, so it's been quite a while. And I wasn't able to find any specific tax abatement records that we've done for commercial businesses. These are two tools that get a lot of backlash when used poorly in the media, so I'm sure you've seen articles or heard of failed TIF districts or projects that are upside down. So putting this forward for consideration, we're able to develop our policy and make it just as conservative and controlled as we'd like. And I would like a collaborative approach on how we develop that, because the council knows best on how we want to shape the community and what our future goals are. So I would welcome any comments or emails or thoughts as we work through this. I think this is a tool that's used for exception and not to be the mainline, everybody gets it, because I think that's a mistake. But to explain what they are, because we hear them a lot, and they have different terms in different communities, such as pilot or TIF. So in this case, TIF is the difference that you have a property, say it's generating, $594 a year in revenue. It's just sitting there, nothing's happening with it. It's a green field. So that would be an ideal opportunity to offer some sort of abatement or support. So what happens is when we make it a district and we help support with the revenue that comes in from the increment that's generated, so that tax increment, that's the difference between that $594 and when it hits, say, $600,000 of taxable value. That amount is able to then be used to help repay project cost or infrastructure. There's a couple different ways we can finance it, from like least risky to most risky. Of course, I would encourage us to look at the least risky, which is pay-go, which the developer pays up front for the project cost, and then that amount that's generated as it gets up to full value helps then repay back the project, as opposed to, say, the most risky, which is a general obligation bond in which the city takes out a liability in its own name, backing the basically the tax value, and then is on the hook for it. Those feel so very scary because if it fails, then the city is at full risk, and then they have to raise the levy to make up for the difference. And we don't want that. We want controlled and safe and successful projects. And then tax abatement is a little easier to explain. Essentially, a company comes in and they're asking for a discount on their property taxes for the project for a set amount of time. So it can go through the 3 taxing entities, school district, the county, us, or state statute has it set where if one decides not to participate, it defaults to a 20-year length, but we can always shorten it if we want. And one of the requirements is it can't exceed the 10% of the net tax capacity, so it can't go beyond that because it'd be too much is being discounted. And if all join in, we can have it set to a default of 8 years. So again, we can think about like how long we want it to be. What you've got, too, is a draft proposal of a policy. It's a good place to start if we've just not ever considered TIF or abatement. And we're working with a municipal advisor and a financial advisor to get it right in terms of the state statute, because I had it apparently too conservative. They were like, we need to pull some of these things out. So my goal is to make it so it fits well for our community. And The question is, why do we need this? What purpose does it serve? So again, we have that green space that's only getting $594 a year. It's not helping our tax revenue. It's not really doing anything for the community, but if it were successful, it could be, a daycare or a housing development or a prosperous business with people working. So essentially, these incentives are used to help when the market has failed or turning things into something that has a clear trajectory for increased value for the community. Let's see here. So I guess people often see the negativity in the news about TIF districts, and it frequently happens from developers overpromising on a project and it under-delivering, and then not good vetting. So then they find out that the projects were never feasible, and that creates a lot of problems, but there are ways to kind of solve that by having thresholds and look-backs and clawback clauses and milestones that the developer needs to meet, so that way everybody has a consistent, comprehensive understanding of how the process works and what's expected of them, which I feel like both council and developers appreciate consistency, because then they know what to expect. And then the benefits are we get a larger tax base, we get more people living here, more opportunities for jobs. And with TIF, there's different types of districts, and they require certain components. So soils, you have to have it designated by the MPCA because it's tainted in some way. So that helps kind of clean it up and get the site usable. Redevelopment has a 26-year one, and housing, I think, has 26 years. But the goal is to get it up to that top amount of the taxable value just as fast as possible and close it out, because you don't want it to just continue to linger and linger. You want to close it out quick. And we looked at different rules for some of them. They require that you have substandard buildings on the facility or like the parcel, and sometimes that's not always doable because it may be just a green field. So sometimes this is where TIF won't work, and then you have to kind of look at maybe abatement's an option. And they both have different rules of how they can be used. So TIF won't do market rate housing or offices or retail development, but that's where abatement can kind of slide in and offer maybe some solutions. And then we see, too, with a lot of communities where they offer these abatements, say, to a large company because they're trying to poach them in a competition against other states. And we don't want to be overutilizing these because it's just a race to the bottom. And we do want to maintain some quality of life in the community and make sure we're doing it right. And if they're not open to what we can offer, then maybe it's just not a good fit. And that's okay, too. And we also want to make sure that the incentives we could potentially offer lead to job creation, because we want people to have jobs and we want people to work in the community. So this is a lot to think on, and I don't expect any answers right away on this. So if it works, I can bring this back for work session in 2 weeks on the 26th if you want to look over it and think about what works best for the community and give me some thoughts.
All right, thanks, Maggie. Any questions for Maggie on the work done so far or the process she described? No?
I like it.
Okay, I think it's a great idea for us to start to develop some of these tools that fit our community, and then this council or future councils can decide to approve them or not approve them, but to have them at as options, I think, is always a benefit.
Absolutely.
So, okay, yeah, I look forward to future discussions on this.
And if you guys like this and you want to move forward with it, then we'll have a discussion with the school district and the county, make sure that they feel comfortable with these as well.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Any other questions on the TIF or tax abatement process? Okay, seeing none, let's get to the next item here. Item number 5, workers' compensation credits as part of the Border Cities Enterprise Zone Program.
Okay, so we started to review this one last year and get it ready. However, there were 2 development projects that we were kind of waiting on to see if they would come through and use our Border Cities tax credit. So we paused on this one, and it seems like it's the right time to bring this forward. So right now we currently use the state allocated tax credits toward property tax reduction. So if you build a building and it's industrial and manufacturing and you add some jobs, after you get done building it, you can, after consulting the EDA, you can request to get some Border Cities tax credits to offset your project. So this would be an additional use to then offer them towards businesses with their workers' compensation costs, and we've got some max and some caps that are set basically by the state. This is almost exactly a mirror image of Moorhead's. They did just increase in Moorhead their cap, so I believe they're at 40,000, but we set it at 30,000 per business. And then our EDA would like to see the risk that's classified for the business as well. So they could apply for up to 25% of their total expense, capped at 30,000, and the state statute says a maximum credit of $1,500 per employee. So the process that we have set in place is we would reserve $100,000 in our bank account to make sure, in case that beneficial company that we really want, that's integral to the growth of this community, we have some credit sets for them. And then we would also prioritize our property tax ones, and then if there's leftover, we could use it towards these workers' compensation credits. And I've attached a draft policy and just some information about what the applicant would see, and then how it runs behind the scenes for us as city staff.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Any questions for Maggie on the workers' comp credit as part of the Border Cities enterprise? Go ahead.
Do we already have the $100,000 in the bank?
We do. I think we're at 433,000.
It comes before council for approval once a year instead of every time we have to do something.
Yes. So the benefit of this one, as opposed to property tax, will still come through with the normal EDA work session, regular session, public hearing if it's over 150,000. This one, because you could have, I think Moorehead said they have like 150 that apply, instead of having a work session and a public hearing for each one, which would clog up your agendas. This is a little faster. And the state Border Cities team said this is legal to do it that way.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on the Border City Enterprise Program? Okay, I see none. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Okay, let's move on to item number 6 then. Request to adopt a vehicle replacement policy. Chief Headland.
Thank you, Mr. President. This stems from earlier in the year, the police department had brought forward a request to purchase a new squad car. At that point in time, for a variety of reasons, council chose not to take action on that request. I subsequently spoke to Mr. Huttunen and President Larson, and kind of came to the agreement between us that we thought we should look into what other agencies are doing and possibly recommend and or develop a vehicle replacement policy. Contacted a number of agencies, as I discussed in my RCA, and 2 agencies actually did come back with intact vehicle replacement policies. I don't have a preference over one or the other. I am waiting for some additional information on the Elk River plan. They didn't include, unfortunately, their exact matrix on how they develop the points. I've been, unfortunately, missing the Elk River chief. We've been going back and forth a little bit, but I'm sure I'll have that information very soon. I'm not necessarily looking for council to act at this point in time, just looking for direction. If a vehicle replacement policy is something you would like us to move forward with, I would start to work on finalizing one and fine-tuning it for the city of East Grand Forks, and I'd work with Mr. Huttunen on that as well.
Great. Thank you, Chief Headland. Any questions for the chief? We'll start with Mr. Helms.
Thank you. What was your policy before on getting new squads? How many years?
When I took over as chief 18 years ago, the city typically kept them for 2 years, rebuilt them, drove them for additional 2 years, and then replaced them. The vehicle costs towards the end, the repair costs were extremely high, so we switched to a 3-year plan. Most years, that's what it's been ever since. There were a few years, I shouldn't say a few, I think there was 2 years where, for budgetary reasons, council chose not to approve any vehicles, and there was a couple different times where we had squads. Our sedan, for example, that was a relatively low mileage vehicle, so we kept it, I think it was 2 years longer than you normally would have. We've done that on a couple times, even with the SUVs, if it reached that 3-year mark, but the mileage and condition were low enough and good enough that we were able to keep driving it, we did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Riopel.
From viewing the different plans, I'd kind of like to see a hybrid of a couple of them. I'm not on this 3-year plan that I know Grand Forks has a lot more money than we have, but and we're probably not doing as many cars. But I'd like to do maybe a 4-year, 5-year plan, or an optional that, like you said, the officer said, "Hey, nothing wrong with this car. Let's use it another year." They're going to have to help us on some of that stuff, but it's something to look at for us, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Pukshabinsky.
Thank you. I like the idea of a committee, as well as having some sort of a grading scale for every vehicle that the city has. And that committee would need to sign off on any purchase of any vehicle, regardless of the department, before it comes to city council. So I would like to see, one, some sort of a committee formed, and then two, the development of the policy by that committee, as well as an inventory of all the vehicles that would be subject to the committee.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, I think putting a policy in place is the right way to do it. And if it's not perfect at first, we can adjust. But having this plan to fall back on will kind of avoid some of the like one-off, here or there. We'll always have a reference, or future councils can kind of understand what our thoughts were. So I think this is heading in the right direction for sure.
Thoughts on how we should proceed? Should we be looking at forming a committee as Mr. Pukshabinsky recommends, and having that committee develop the plan, or should I just continue working on one? What are thoughts?
Yeah, I think, and this will come back to another work session, I would think, when it, but yeah, I think having a committee should be strongly considered, kind of following Ben's comments there. We have mechanics on staff. It'd be great to have their input. I'm by no means an expert on when to replace a squad car, so I'm hoping that the subject matter experts work together to develop this policy, and if that's the committee, great.
Yeah. And obviously, if we're going to do citywide, we'd need to include all the department heads that actually have vehicles, Public Works and Parks and Rec, most specifically.
Seems like good timing to pull in all the vehicles, kind of to Ben's point, and fit them into this policy. Kind of like that first one that was attached here, where there's police and building maintenance and fire and everything. Maybe engines are separate, but it would just be a real win, I think, to have everything put together in a comprehensive policy. We can still argue about the cost, though, right? Like, that's our job. Okay. Any other questions for Chief Headland on the vehicle replacement policy?
I don't have any questions, but I would agree, like, a fleet committee is what that one committee called it. I, again, don't want to be part of it because I know nothing, but I think it's a great idea for keeping track of everything.
So, good.
Can I maybe just follow up a question to that?
Please.
Maybe to both of you, or all of you. I guess I envision a fleet committee to be a makeup of staff from different departments, not necessarily all department heads, at different levels of the organization, right? Would there be an interest in having a council member on that, or do we leave the council completely out, have it truly be a staff recommendation that would be included as part of budget discussion and so forth?
Good question. Anyone feel passionately about having a council member on that committee?
I think it'd be a good idea.
I think it'd be a good idea as well.
Okay.
I think two guys just volunteered for the committee.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I think that's what we could look to for like the work session in a couple of weeks, is I can work with Chief on kind of putting together a recommended staff makeup, and then you all could work on who the council reps are.
Yeah, that'd be
To be
great.
appointed to that.
I think with all the department heads and having a committee, I think you can come up with a pretty good program.
I think it's great. And, to your point, having a council person there from the beginning, you could kind of raise a flag if we're all, scrambling with budget concerns. You can get ahead of things, rather than address them in a meeting. So.
Yeah, I agree. Having council representation on there for the budgetary overall of the city is best.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that give you guys enough direction for next steps? Great. Okay, let's move on to item number 7 then, and that's request to enter an agreement with Flock Safety for the installation of automatic license plate reader and live video systems. We'll start with Chief Headland.
Thank you. Flock Safety in particular, but license plate readers in general, is something I've looked at for the past couple of years, contemplated bringing it forward just for a variety of reasons. Haven't got into it to the depth required to ever bring it to council action. Corporal Rue came to me, Investigator Rue came to me earlier this year, and with some ideas, and he'd done quite a bit of research into LPR's license plate readers himself, and we decided to dig into it even deeper. We've had a variety of meetings with Flock, and City Administrator Huttunen has also sat in on several of those as we've gotten more and more information about these systems. Our recommendation is that the city would allow us to move forward in an agreement with Flock. The cameras, both the license plate reader cameras and the video cameras that we're recommending remain the property of Flock. They're basically installed in town. We're essentially getting the software and the usage of them, in this case for a 2-year time period. The way I'm looking to fund this is through our asset forfeiture fund, which is at this point in time a little over $34,000. These 4 systems would wind up, over the 2-year period, would wind up costing us $28,000 that would all come out of that. So there would be no cost to the general fund for this 2-year time period. Flock normally does at least 3-year agreements, but they were willing to keep it at 2 years to keep it in the money that we know we'll have, and it's very possible we know we'll have additional auctions. We just don't know it to the degree that they'll bring in funding. So it's possible we can fund this further out if it looks like the program is worth it, and that's certainly something that we'll be monitoring. But we felt that a 2-year program would be, or a 2-year investment in the program would give us a very good idea of how effective the systems are going to be for our department. It's not necessarily a crime prevention program so much as it is a crime-solving program, to be honest with you. I do have a brief PowerPoint that I'm going to just run through, and if Corporal Rue has comments to make, I encourage him to do that as well, because as I mentioned, he's done probably more research into it than I have. Flock, it's driven by a shared mission: eliminate crime and shape a safer future together. It's used by a number of businesses as well as a large number of communities. 2 regional businesses that regularly use Flock systems in their parking lot areas are Lowe's and Home Depot, both very large national corporations that use Flock. 2,800 crimes solved per day using Flock, and I'm not quite sure where they came up with this number, but 12,000 customers protected by Flock. Collaborative policing technology. Leading public safety technology partners supporting over 5,000 communities nationwide with tools that drive real outcomes, reducing crime, improving efficiency, and enhancing officer, employee, and community safety. And I think, as you can see, they're using pictures from the Washington area, and they have a Yakima PD chief there. He says it's the single greatest change since DNA. What the system does is a game changer. This is just a phone there as an example of how our staff would get the hits. As a vehicle goes through past any of these cameras, it's snapping a picture of the vehicle and the license plate. From the rear of the vehicle is how they're designed to get a picture of the rear of the vehicle. And if that vehicle shows up on a hot list, for example, as a stolen vehicle or an Amber Alert or something similar to that, a national database, we would automatically get a hit on that. It would alert us as to where the vehicle had been. It would allow our officers to respond. The 4 systems, we would kind of be looking at some of the major thoroughfares coming into town, Demers Avenue downtown, Gateway on the north end for vehicles coming into Grand Forks. We were looking at coming in from the north on 220, and then, I apologize, that was one we'd considered, but in trying to limit the number of locations, we'd probably have one near the Point Bridge in that general area. Exact location would have to be determined still, and then also one that would record traffic coming in on Highway 2 from the east. So it wouldn't get every vehicle obviously coming to town, but it would get a large number of them. Some of the concerns that people sometimes have is that they're worried about this being an invasion of privacy or a little bit of Big Brother's watching. I can assure you that that's definitely not the case. While the data of all those vehicles that go through is stored, Flock has a policy within their own company that the data is destroyed after 30 days, so nothing is held past 30 days. You could have that even lower. If we as a city chose to have it lower, we could do so. The state requires 60 days, I believe is what Corporal Rue said. So Flock is already doing half the time that the state requires if you're using license plate readers. Lost my train of thought, I apologize.
About the searches and
audits with
Oh, yes.
case
And,
numbers.
beyond that, beyond just the national hits that hopefully are a good benefit, if we want to use it to search for specific vehicles related to crimes in town, it's not just random searches. You can't do that. It's not, Minnesota statute forbids that. You have to enter information that specifically identifies which officer is making the request or the search into the system, and then you also have to tie it to an active criminal complaint. So we would have to use our complaint number and tie it to that search, and that's auditable. Minnesota also, as part of the statute, requires an audit every 2 years, just like we have to do now with our body cams. We would have to do an audit with this to prove that our officers are doing it correctly. So I'll move on with this, and feel free to ask questions. It's not looking for people, it's looking for vehicles. So it's, you can see the standard picture. Obviously, sometimes with the mobile video, you may wind up seeing some front pictures, and maybe you'd be able to recognize somebody, but you're typically looking for vehicle identifying information, specifically the rear license plate, the make, the different types of vehicles. If we don't have a license plate, as I mentioned in my RCA, we've got a report of some type of crime, and we get either a eyewitness that saw a vehicle but maybe didn't get the plate, or a vehicle description. We can enter in some of that information, and if a vehicle matching those descriptions has gone through any of our 4 sites, it'll let us know that, and we're able to use that then to narrow it down. Was this vehicle even possibly our suspect? It's not something that you're going to go out and arrest somebody just on that. You've still got to develop your case, but it gives us a tool to move forward on an investigation. The system works very well at night as well. It's a lot of camera systems and businesses around town don't do all that great at night. These do pretty good. And I mean, I guess that's one thing I'd like to point out. We regularly, if crimes around town, our officers are going up and down the street looking for people that might have a Ring camera. We're talking to businesses and getting this type of footage, video footage from businesses that have those systems in place already. So this is just kind of an extension of that, to be honest with you. The data is 100% owned by us. That's Flux Systems, but the data is ours. If we, in the course of the systems checks, if it does flag something and we have it for an active case, we can pull that out and attach to that case so that it is maintained longer as part of that case, as long as that case's information would be held for our data request, public information stuff. But otherwise it's automatically deleted after that 30 days. Private customers would not have access to us. Lowe's, for example, wouldn't have access to our information. As I mentioned, it automatically deletes it after 30 days. It's only taking images of publicly available information. It's cars that are already out on the city streets. So we're not going into these driveway. They're not on vehicles. We're not requesting to have them on vehicles. A lot of the state patrol is currently using Axon cameras of the same variety that's on the majority of the squad cars. They're driving around with those cameras already on their squad cars. We don't have that. We're not looking to do that at this point in time. And you can share this information with other agencies, but you share it with who you want to share it with. For us, we would probably have a very in-depth internal discussion looking at other regional agencies that already have flock systems and try to decide whether we felt there would be any benefit. Fargo is the closest large agency that has flock, but that would be one that we would probably want to share with, just because so many, you're just across US Highway 2 and down 29 and you're in Fargo. So we definitely have a large number of people that commit crimes in our town that wind up going through Fargo. So that could be beneficial for us to, and vice versa, I guess, could be beneficial for us to share with them. But that we wouldn't just willy-nilly share it with everyone. No facial recognition, as I mentioned, that's obviously been in the news, some not so great cases with facial recognition. You need to develop your case. You're not going out and arresting somebody just based on the flock images. All data is encrypted. It meets all the federal standards, so it's very safe. As it mentions in the information that I included in the RCA, they've never been hacked to this point in time. That's not saying it couldn't ever happen, but at this point in time, they never have been. Transparency. Some agencies will actually put their information right on the website, showing how often, and we can certainly do that, or you update it periodically, showing how many vehicles have gone through, how many hits you've had, et cetera, things like that. In my mind, if we get this approved, I would assume that we would probably come back after about a 6-month time period and make a presentation to council letting you know how things have worked out for 6 months and whether we felt any changes need to be made, et cetera. And also, I guess, looking for input from you folks at that point in time as well. There's search filters that prevents related to immigration or reproductive care in the coastal community. That's been certainly a concern in recent months, especially the immigration issues. If you want to put those filters in, you can do so. Federal limitations, there is no automatic federal access to nationwide or state lookup. Only agencies can share their data, not FLOC. So FLOC isn't, we don't have to worry about FLOC saying, Homeland Security, do you want this information from East Grand Forks? They can't do that. If permanent audit logs, the information as far as the logs, the audits go, that's kept permanently. And they would contact us if they had received any legal requests for our data. Just a few of the agencies in Minnesota that currently have it. There's 80 plus agencies in Minnesota, and the number is steadily increasing. Just one example, Harmar Shopping Center down in Roseville, 1 hour after they'd had it involved, they had an alert on a suspect with an active warrant, and the subject was subsequently arrested. So only an hour after they had the systems in place. Another case, this one out of Georgia. Amber Alert was issued on this child. 12:33, search through the FLOC system began at 1:01. They located the vehicle at 2:30 on the system, and they were able to track it down and make a felony stop at 5 o'clock. And so in less than 6 hours, the baby was reunited with that, largely because of the FLOC systems. That's all I have on there. Do you have any other comments that you thought we should make?
No. One of the things I think really stood out to me in my research and talking to people is they compared this is like you're hiring 4 more cops that never blink and never take a break and work 24 hours a day. So the value that I think that we would really get post-investigation to would be immense. Being able to go back and develop suspects early and efficiently would be so beneficial for our guys. I could give you countless examples of cases that we work on for days and weeks before we develop the lead that we could get in a matter of seconds with this.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Karen.
One question that I have is, you currently are showing that it is $28,000 for 2 years. What is the longevity of these cameras?
Well, the cameras would be replaced if they were to wear out, so they would automatically be replaced. So I'm honestly not sure.
So is that part of the contract?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Our contract only goes through 2 years, so we could extend, and it would be, if the cameras needed to be replaced, they would be replaced for each additional year.
So it is, so basically you're looking at $14,000
per year
annually,
yes.
Plus a subscription of $3,500. So you're looking at $20,000 per year.
No, $14,000 is the $3,500 per year. It's 4 systems at $3,500 each. But so the FLOC camera itself, the LPR, is $3,000. The video camera is an additional $500. So each of those 4 locations costs $3,500. So that's the $14,000 each year. That covers everything. So our total cost per year is $14,000
Per year.
per year.
And the closest place that currently has this system in place is Fargo.
For a large community, I'm not sure if there's smaller ones in Minnesota that are closer.
There are some in the area. The Drug Task Force in the Bemidji area is using them. So there's one in Monoman. There are some in Grand Forks, like Chief mentioned, Lowe's is using them. So there are some in the area. So yeah, the closest I would say though are Fargo and then that Bemidji Task Force.
But currently Grand Forks PD is not using it.
They're not.
No.
Can you tell me why you chose to go with this system?
Yeah, are you saying this specific system versus other companies that offer the same system?
So this is a new system to us currently, right? And so you're thinking just because it reduces the time of finding a suspect?
Not only
that was your initial thought process with getting it.
Not only reducing time, but also, I mean, I could give you examples too of cases that just go cold where we don't ever develop a lead, where we maybe get a vehicle that we see on a business surveillance camera where we get a description, but we're never able to identify it. So this would give us an opportunity to capture a license plate and attach a license plate to a vehicle that we see later at a crime. So again, working those investigations after the fact, not only would it make it more efficient, it would just make us more successful in actually identifying people too.
And is this something that is currently worked into your budget?
I'll let you answer.
It would be, these first 2 years would be paid for out of our asset forfeiture fund, which is not part of the general fund. It's an account that we can use for, it has to be items that would supplement our budget, not supplant anything. So for the next 2 years, it would be paid for. Basically, we'd be having a trial run on it for 2 years with all the money coming out of that asset forfeiture fund. At that point in time, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to be the chief in 2 years. So whoever's the chief at that point in time, if they're still finding value in the systems, they would bring a request at that point in time forward to you. If there's still funding in the asset forfeiture fund, which right now we'd have about 6,000 more, but we're in corporate reviews working on getting another auction going in the near future. Not very many vehicles, but it will bring some additional funds into that. It's possible before that 2-year time period that we could have enough to pay for at least one more year. And if not at that point in time, then if the chief felt it was important, he would bring it forward to you folks as part of the regular budget, and it would be up to you to determine, or that council to determine whether they felt it was valuable as well. So basically, it's $28,000 for us to give it a try for the 2 years.
One thing I wanted to add to that too is there are some grants available that we've looked at and I've researched. We just haven't gone through with applying for those yet until we know that we're actually going to have the program. So that would be something going forward that we would pursue as well.
Great. Okay. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go to Tim and then over to Tammy.
That was part of my question, is the grant availability. The other thing, this is an excellent use of that asset forfeiture money. I think that this might even help that to grow a little bit in the future too. That's my personal thought on it. We might be able to have enough funds to have it be self-sufficient, is what the goal would be. And I think with the grant money, if there is some, that would be great. I like this system. So.
Thanks, Tim. Go ahead, Tammy.
Yeah, I'm curious how often you use it. It'll be interesting to see. Can you remind me who has access to this information? Like, do you have to be, I know you said you log in, like, does it have to be like an investigator, or can just a patrolman log in?
Yeah, so we would have to work out some logistics as far as what user permissions would be. So whether an officer could do a search or whether we would have to have an investigator would be something we would figure out logistically as we move forward with it. I know, one thing that came up was you can actually add and create your own custom hot list. So if we knew we were, like say there was somebody that we were looking for and it was urgent, maybe an Amber Alert, or there was a suicidal person, we can add that in as a custom alert as well. So we have had some discussion about limiting the people that can do that to probably our corporals and our sergeants, similar to they add in our missing people and things like that too.
Okay. Yeah, I would be in support of that, just having like a network of people who can access it. Sound good?
All right, thank you. We'll go back to Mr. Riopel.
Just to add on to that, I'd like to see, the sergeant is usually the shift commander, shift supervisor at that time. The investigators are not always in-house. Sometimes you're at the house. So we should have someone that can say, hey, we need this information, we need it now. Can we, and have someone that can say yes to that. We're paying the sergeant to make some decisions anyway, so this could be another one.
We will have to put into place a policy. The state has a number of model policies that we would refer to, so we would make sure and have all the ducks in a row and make sure we're meeting Minnesota Statute.
Okay. Mr. Helms.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple questions, and one of them you have answered already about you're not going to have them in a squad car, but it's capable to do that if you want to?
These aren't. These particular ones are not. They do have them out there. That was when I first started hearing about automated license plate readers probably a decade ago. That's how all of them were used. They were used on the squad cars. And as I mentioned, Minnesota Highway Patrol currently is using them on their squad cars. A number of agencies are around the state. We have never chosen to do so. One of the reasons I don't like those is every time you have a squad car parked, you're still paying to have that license plate reader, but it's not doing you any good when it's sitting in the parking lot. It's doing you good when it's out being driven around, but roughly half the time it's probably not doing any good. Whereas these are in use 24/7.
Sure. So you're talking, what are you talking, having four of them out there?
4 is the minimum that they can do if you want to be able to be in the network. So that was the smallest one we could do, and that was basically the most we could do to fit in a 2-year plan under our asset forfeiture funds, because we only have $34,000. I wanted to keep our total expense out of that. I didn't want to have to come to you folks on a system that we believe is going to be very effective, but obviously we haven't used yet. So I wanted to be able to give it a trial with funds that aren't in the general fund. And as Mr. Reid mentioned, I also felt this was a very good use of those asset forfeiture funds.
So another question on the 4 of them. Just explain to me again, on each one of those is how much a year?
$3,500.
$3,500
Yes.
per unit. Okay, so it was 14 something you said?
$14,000 per year even.
Okay, so, and that's a 2-year deal, right? So if you, and I'm guessing the way you talked is you don't normally do just a 3-year or something?
The company usually just does 3, but I had told them we were limited. I said I didn't want to be going to folks and asking for additional funds. This was not a budgeted item.
Right.
So if we were going to try to adopt it this year, it had to be from a different funding source, which the asset forfeiture fund is. That can't be a budgeted thing.
Right.
Those funds have to be used as a supplement to our budget and not as a plan.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect example of something that you can
Sure.
use those funds.
So where I was going with it is that if you signed up for a 3-year deal, is the price any different on that, or does it stay the same?
It would have stayed the same.
Okay, so you don't have to pay more just because they give you a 2-year. Then you're kind of okay.
No, it's possible that their cost for that 3rd year right now it would cost us an additional $14,000 if we were to sign up for a 3rd year.
Okay.
2 years from now, they're going to sign up for that additional year. If the city chooses to, it's possible they'll have raised their rates. We don't know because we don't have any.
And then, as you said, you can cancel at any time if it doesn't.
Yeah, if the 2 years goes by and we don't want the systems anymore, they come and take the cameras and we're all done.
So you just put them on a light pole or something out there, or do you have? That's what you're doing. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, for installation, they have a couple different options. They have a pole that they'll install, and then it runs off a solar panel.
Okay.
Or you can hook them up to an existing power source too.
Okay. I just wondered if you had a separate pole or if you just hung them up somewhere, or I didn't.
It varies depending on the location.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
And this is something that's if this gets approved next week, they're not going to be going into 2 weeks. They're several months out by the time we get all the paperwork done and get on their schedule and get our policy in place. That's all things you're probably talking end of the summer at the earliest.
I guess I'd have to agree with Mr. Reid. I think it'd be a good item to try for sure. See if it works, it works, I guess. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Helms. We'll go to Mr. Pukshavinsky.
Couple questions. Is there a sign by these cameras that explains what they are?
There is not.
No, so it's just a camera up on a pole that, okay. And then say the location, you've picked out 4 locations. Say we don't like the location or it's just not performing. Say there's 1 out of the 4 that just isn't really catching anything or doesn't, there's never any cars that drive by there. Can we move them on our own, or do you need to call Flock and say, hey, we want this moved to this location, and is there a charge for them to come back out and move that camera if they're the ones doing the moving?
You have to go through Flock. They don't want them to be just mobile, put them on around wherever you want. They're designed to be permanent locations. And we've already, they recommended from our initial discussions, I think it was like 7 different locations, and we narrowed that down to the 4. We actually did a poll amongst our officers as to, here's the possible locations we're considering. What areas do you folks feel would be the most effective? And the 4 that we're recommending are what our officers felt would be the most beneficial.
Okay. So say one of those spots just
flat out doesn't pan out,
work.
then we could try a different location. For example, we don't have plans to have anything on 220 North with vehicles coming in from the north. That would be a possibility to switch to something. That would have been probably our 5th location had we had the funding to go for 5. But again, as I tried to stress to the company, I want to make sure we stay within our funding allocations.
Right. Say in 6 months that one of the cameras just isn't a great location. We decide that we wanted to move it to 220.
I think we could. There's a possibility they might charge us for the move at that point.
We should get that clarified and figure out how much is that. If it's $200 or whatever, that's fine. But if it's a couple thousand, then that's going to eat into your budget.
Sure.
So, thank you.
All right. Any further questions on the Flock cameras for Chief Headland or Corporal Rue? Okay, see none. All right. Thanks, guys. Okay, let's see. Chief, if you'll stay up here. We got a couple more. The next item is pet boarding and licensing policy and code updates. We'll start with Chief Hedlund.
Thank you. About 2 months ago now, I was contacted by Peterson Veterinary Clinic. Thank you. For those of you that may not be aware, Peterson's has served as our animal impound for dogs and cats that are strays or bite cases or a variety of reasons that animals might get impounded in town. But they've served as our impound since, I think, long before I became chief of police here. Peterson's earlier this year or late last year was sold to a different company called CareVet, and a variety of factors have come into play with that, where Peterson's was looking at possibly not serving as our pet impound, animal impound any further. Based on those conversations, I contacted both Circle of Friends in Grand Forks, the Crookston Humane Society, as well as a variety of other places, and was not able to find anybody that was going to be able to even remotely either they flat out wouldn't take us on as a client, or the economics and other factors that it just didn't make it doable. So I went back to Peterson's, and they were kind enough to, despite the fact that they had planned on getting out of it, they kept on taking our animals throughout the process. And I ultimately had additional conversations with Dr. Peterson and the staff, and we came up with the idea of essentially increasing their boarding fees. Their biggest problem is on the weekend. For them to have staff come in purely to take care of, because they're not a boarding center. So you can't go and leave your pet there because you're going to go on vacation. That's not one of their things. So for them to have to come in and take care of a dog or a cat that we have impounded there, they've got to be able to pay their staff to do that. And if you're not getting paid very much and they're not charging us very much, it's difficult for them to pay their staff. They need to be able to pay their staff enough money to make it worth their time to go in and take care of these animals, which I felt was very reasonable. We had some discussion on charges, and ultimately they came back with the fees that we put into place late in just about a week and a half ago now. Unfortunately, that has the potential of costing the city a significant amount of money, because if we end up taking in a stray cat, stray dog, whatever the case may be, if that animal is there all weekend and ultimately nobody ever claims it, more often than not, they're able to get Circle of Friends, take those animals, sometimes journey home, but the majority of them wind up going to Circle of Friends, and they're able, if it's an adoptable animal, they'll take them on and then they'll be able to adopt it, but that means we've already had 5 days worth of boarding fees. If that includes a weekend, those costs go up very quickly. So just as an internal department head group, Mr. Huttunen and my staff, we've all been talking, trying to figure out different ways to try to, how can we get those numbers down? If we stop, or if we come in contact with an animal that's a stray, picked up by someone, just called in as a stray, we would have dealing with it for whatever reason. If it's got a license, a city license, we're able to track down that owner more often than not. Sometimes they don't answer the phone, but more often than not, we're able to track down that owner and get it back without having to impound it. That saves the citizen money, and that saves us as a city money if it's, from and time as well, to be honest with you. The one thought we had was, what if we just don't charge for licenses? We currently charge $10 a year. When I talked about this with Peterson staff, they said they would actually be willing to issue the licenses themselves as long as we weren't charging for them. They do not want to handle money on behalf of the city, but they would be willing to give out no-charge licenses. The licenses would be tied to when the animal's rabies vaccination is due. So if I had a dog that was due for a vaccination in 2027, the license would be good until then. When it was renewed, when I updated the rabies vaccination, Peterson's would be able to issue a new license at that point in time that would be then good for that rabies cycle, which is typically 3 years. I got to think just through their clients, we would be able to dramatically increase the number of pets that are licensed, which hopefully helps us decrease the number of animals that we're having to impound, and hopefully help us keep those costs under control. The one number I did not have in my RCA, and I apologize for that, Mr. Huttunen brought it up yesterday at our department head meeting, was how much money did we bring in on those boarding fees? Because if Mr. Riopel's dog wanders away, we pick it up, he wants his dog back, well, he has to pay those boarding fees before he's able to get that dog back. Grand total between dogs and cats was a little over $5,000 that we brought in. So we had a net loss on animals that were impounded of about $9,000 last year. I would anticipate that's going to go up significantly with increased fees if we don't find a way to reduce the number of animals that are going in. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Chief. Any questions for Chief Headland? We'll go ahead and start with Mr.
Yeah, I have
Holmes.
one. When you impound that animal, and I'm referring back to years ago, when you impound Mr. Riopel's dog, and he comes to you and he complains and says, hey, I didn't know he even got out or whatever, I'll pick him up right now. Are we forgiving those fees to anybody, or are we making them pay them?
Oftentimes we are. Usually they'll get, for example, if he doesn't have his pet license, one of the things he has to do is he has to get it licensed. So that's, there are some fees that he would definitely be charged for, but if it's a very short time period, oftentimes we are forgiving the fees just to try to make it a little bit easier on the people if it's a very short time.
Yeah, but the city still has to pay, right? Or not?
It depends on. Peterson's doesn't necessarily. If their staff hasn't had to be involved, they typically don't charge us.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. The reason I asked that question is back years ago, I used to be the dog catcher in East Grand Forks. Bet you didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't know.
But this is back when Ellingson and some of those guys were on the force. And I had an old blue van that the city had, and I used to run around with that thing. But I'd pick up a pet and I'd take it to the veterinarian, and then people would come in, and they just give it back to them with no charge, and they're paying me to do it. So I finally went in to the chief and said, hey, you know what, let's just quit this, because you're losing money, you're not doing anything. So that's why I was asking if you're still in that process of. We
try to be kind, I guess.
Yeah, you want to be fair.
If it's a very short period of time, but if we're talking hours or certainly overnight, they have to pay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Chief Headland?
I do not have a dog, by the way.
Okay. Clarification for the
Maybe
record.
they'll pick you up.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Is this a pretty common occurrence? Is there a lot of stray dogs and cats?
Numbers in front of me. It's over 100 a year between dogs and cats.
Some are repeat offenders.
Yeah,
too.
some are definitely repeat offenders, no question.
Those are the ones
Some
you don't
out
want
here
let off the hook.
And unfortunate, we have in the past, we have loaned out live traps for people to catch cats, stray cats. There's a few places in town where there's a lot of stray cats. We've, as a response to this current situation, we've actually stopped doing that because if, say, somebody picks up a stray cat on a Wednesday, we have that cat Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday being boarded. You're talking over $200 in boarding fees just from that time before it's ever even shipped off over to Grand Forks. If it ultimately is a bite case, obviously that's different. We don't have any choice. It's going to have to be impounded. But if it's just a stray, it gets very expensive. Now, I don't know that the decision we made is the right decision, but it's the decision we've made for the time being, just trying to find a way to go about this. If unfortunately, most of those strays aren't going to be licensed, so this program isn't going to, the kind of the feral cat type of thing.
Okay. And then what we would be voting on would be to eliminate the pet licensing fees in effort to increase the amount of licenses that would lower these expenses that the city incurs.
We would work out the details between Peterson's and our department. We'd have to get new licenses ordered because obviously if a person went in and got their pet license or pet rabies shot right now, that's going to be good for 3 years. You'd need a license that's all the way up to 2029. So we would wind up having to buy licenses of a variety of years.
Okay.
So.
And how much is that fee right now that you're getting?
It's $10 to get one right now. So we sell about 100. It goes up and down. Some years it's in the low 90s. It's been as high as maybe in the 120s. So you're talking not much over $1,000 for income.
Sure.
So yes, there is going to be a greater expense on getting the licenses, but I guess I'm trying to look at the bigger picture and hoping that it'll, despite the fact we're going to have an expense on those, I'm hoping it's costing us less in the impounds. You have a few dog impounds, you could very quickly eat up because the dogs cost more because they're more labor intensive for Peterson staff. So you have to, those charges, they're $140 for a week per day on the weekend. So if the dog's there, that's $280 for just Saturday and Sunday. So very quickly, that's paying for all those licenses if we can not do a few of those.
Okay. Chief, Mr. Pokshabinsky.
Thank you. How often do you get dogs and cats and other pets that are not tagged, like not wearing a collar or anything like that?
It's anecdotal. I'm guessing at least half the time.
Okay. And how often do are those pets reunited with their owners?
The vast majority, I was surprised. Peterson's gave us a breakdown, and I wish I would have brought it. They gave us a breakdown last year of all the animals that we took into their impound, and the vast majority of the dogs were ultimately returned to their owners. A small number of those weren't. And most of those were adoptable and were able to go to Circle of Friends. The majority of cats were not returned to owners. The majority of cats were like true strays, and they were able to get a lot of those to Circle of Friends, some also to Journey Home. And I think Circle of Friends has some contacts in North Dakota where they're able to take some of those cats for some. There's a number of farmers that don't mind a cat being a little bit on the feral side because they are going to basically make it a barn cat to be a mother. So that they're not that worried about the fact that it might not be the friendliest cat. They don't want it to be necessarily friendly, but for a pet, that's something to be licensed. I think the majority of the true pets get returned to their owners, but certainly in dogs, but it would be that much quicker and faster if we were able to get it this way.
Do we have a microchip reader for pets, and can we get one? And
we certainly could, and that was another option that I talked about a little bit with the Peterson staff, but that's a greater expense. Yeah, I'm not sure what the cost would be, but yeah, that's certainly an option. If you would like us to look into that, I can talk to them further, and maybe we go that route to you, where if you bring your pet in, it can be microchipped. But I got a feeling Peterson's is going to charge us to do that, and certainly just the cost of microchipping.
I know you can get your pets microchip there, but I guess I'm looking for, like, I don't know if I want to call it like a speed of service, that if we can find a dog that doesn't have a collar or anything in there, but we can determine that the pet is microchipped, we can scan that and then just bring the dog where
I can certainly talk to them, even if we didn't want to do a microchip program, so to speak. I could certainly talk to them and see what we would need to do to get a reader for our staff.
Right. And then I guess question for Ron is, if we have repeat offenders of dogs that don't have any identification tags, if it's like a second offense, can we force that pet to get a microchip so that if it happens to get away a third time, then we know where it goes?
Well, I think we could potentially do that if we wanted to. To answer the question, I think that we could set up an ordinance that would do that right now. It's basically just used for potentially dangerous dogs and dangerous dogs after one has bitten somebody or whatever. Up to the first time, I think there's a requirement to chip them and that sort of thing. But I haven't seen a statute or a ordinance that requires them if it's just a frequently stray or wandering animal without a leash.
One thing that I had thought about doing, I didn't have it in my RCA, but it's just one of the, as we've discussed this, one of the million ideas that have gone through my head and debated on the merits. I did consider, if we have this campaign of you can get your pet license for free, and if you, for whatever reason, choose not to do so, it's a $50 administrative fee or something along those lines. If, we're going to give it to you free if you're willing to make the small amount of effort that it would take to get that license. But if you're not willing to do that and your pet still gets out, now we're going to charge you. I don't know if that's just an idea.
And that would be a viable alternative too. I mean, we can set our parameters as long as they're within reason.
Could we fine the pet owner an amount greater than the cost of having the pet microchipped, and then say, here's the fine, and then if you get your pet microchipped, we'll waive the fee?
Well, there's two ways to look at that. We'd have to set up some kind of an administrative process that it would potentially come before the council or a group that the council has set up. The other thing of it is we now will prosecute a stray animal, not on a leash, that sort of thing. That's not all that inexpensive either, depending upon the process that you go through, because most of the time I end up having to deal with it a couple of different times because people just don't take care of it right away.
Right. I'm more concerned of, and I think the chief is in the same space here, of let's try and get these pets back to their owners without even having to involve Peterson's.
Yes.
So whatever steps we can take to entice a pet owner to have the necessary documentation with the city and have the documentation on the pet itself saves the police department a heck of a lot of time of if we know whose pet this is, we can just bring it home rather than have to run to Peterson. So that's why I bring up like the microchipping, because I know that there's readers out there.
Yeah.
I assume you don't need to be a licensed veterinarian to have that reader.
No, I'm sure we could get a reader. I just don't know the costs. When I briefly had that discussion with Peterson staff, and they did say that if we were to run the program, they would have to charge for that service. And
right.
I was trying to look at keeping costs as low as possible, and licensing is pretty cheap because it's just a matter of a couple dollars for each license.
Yeah, but I guess where I look back on that is the license only helps if the dog has a tag on it.
Yep.
Or the pet has a tag.
Exactly.
If there is no tag, then we still have the same problem
100%.
running into.
Yep, and the microchip's always there.
Yep. So that's all I have.
No, I like that idea. If we can figure out a way to encourage people to do that, I'm all for it.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Any further questions on the pet licensing? Okay, let's move on then. Item number 9, we have a discussion on police officer recruitment bonus. Chief Headland and Mr. Huttunen.
Okay. I think I'll start on this one. With the agenda item last week at the council meeting, certainly there was some feedback that we'd like items like this or other financial related items to come to work sessions. And I had an opportunity to speak with Councilmember Larson about the idea of bringing it back to the work session, and agreed we should do that to give the opportunity for some discussion if there's a desire for it. And before that, wanted to kind of walk through Robert's rules and procedure on the meeting last week, being that the agenda item didn't receive a motion or a second to be acted on. In Robert's rules, that means essentially the item received no action, and it can be brought back to a meeting like this or future meetings at the direction of staff and with council approval on the agenda to be considered in the future. That's a fine and appropriate process to follow, the way it was followed last week, and it allows us to discuss it tonight. There could have been a couple of other options that the council could have followed and just kind of walk through those. Certainly an action to make a motion in a second could have allowed for some discussion to take place at the meeting. And just because you have a motion in a second and you have an opportunity for the agenda item to be discussed, it also does not mean it has to be voted on that night. The motion in the second can allow for discussion, and then if a council member wanted the item to be either referred back to a future meeting, a motion could be made to refer an item to a work session like tonight. That could have been voted on and approved, and it would have been forcefully brought back to this meeting. You could also make a motion to table it until a future date, a future meeting, and cause no vote to take place that way. Or certainly the options that we're more used to, where you can vote on it at the meeting and vote it up or down. And if the item is voted and failed at the meeting, if it had been done that way, then there's a future process for if a council member wants to request an item to come back and be reconsidered. Somebody that was on the prevailing side of the vote or the no vote in that case would have to request that the item be brought back for reconsideration. So just kind of wanted to walk through those. We've had a couple of items this year that have fallen without a second and sort of died on the table for lack of a motion, and just make sure that we had that kind of maybe understand all the different options that are there. And all that said, to bring it back to the police recruit, just an effort to have it on the agenda tonight for Mr. Headland to be able to kind of present the item as it was requested, and then if there are any questions, be able to answer those. I'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Essentially what it comes down to is Lieutenant Rod Hychek retired last July 13th. So as of tomorrow, we will have had an opening in the police department for 10 months and have been unable to fill that opening. In 2025, after Lieutenant Hychek's retirement, we interviewed 7 different police applicants. 2 of those we gave conditional job offers to, but unfortunately did not pass the background investigation. So we were unable to hire any of those 7 applicants. This year, we have received 5 applications at this point in time. We've interviewed 4 of those. The 5th person applied after the fact, and they're actually a Wisconsin resident that we have not interviewed at this point in time. I'd have to actually dig into it to see if they even meet the qualifications. But for the 4 that we initially interviewed in early March, 3 of them our interview panel felt were very good candidates. The first subject that was at the top of our list, we gave a conditional job offer to. That subject is a current officer in the North Dakota Department, ultimately decided to stay with his existing agency. Second subject is a current student at Northland Tech in Thief River Falls. He ultimately received an offer from Thief River Falls PD and chose to stay there. That's his hometown. He also has a personal business there, so it just kind of made sense for him to stay there. Got us down to our 3rd applicant, who is a UND student that will be graduating this spring. He's scheduled to go to Alexandria Tech for Skills, which is basically the police academy. This summer he would graduate from that in July, and so he would have to take his post-test at that point in time. He also has not completed the background investigation, so even if council approves this and we make that conditional offer, including the $5,000 hire bonus, there's still no guarantee that we're going to hire him because he has to pass that background investigation. So essentially, when I contacted the subject, because of the 2 previous candidates that we've been working through, a month had gone by before I was ever able to talk to this subject. At that point in time, he pointed out that he has received other job offers. He did not tell me where. I did not ask. I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to ask that. But he said he has had other job offers, and he said, I know a lot of agencies are helping out with a variety of factors, tuition, things like that. Would your department be able to do anything? And that's when I reached out. That was on a Friday a few weeks back. That's when I reached out to Mr. Huttunen that evening, and I was going to be going out of town. He knew that, and we agreed that as much as neither one of us wanted to do that, we thought we would try to get on the agenda last week. I went in that night to the RCA, and it was obviously past the time of the work session. I do apologize for that. We felt it was a time-sensitive issue, and in the hopes of trying to get this subject convinced to go with us rather than one of the other agencies that he's received offers from. So that was the kind of the thing behind it. At close of 2025, when we were trying to decide, do we ask council to continue the hiring bonus or not, or do we, the police recruit program, basically we have to have 2 openings for that to come into play. That's been the policy that we established with council. So with just 1 opening, the police recruit program itself wasn't going to come into play. But we thought, in the off chance somebody else leaves, that could come back into play, and that's why we budgeted ultimately the $7,200 that's in there. That was the amount we spent through the police recruit program last year when we hired an officer, and then the hiring bonus is $5,000. So we figured either way we've got it covered should we need to bring it back. Mr. Huttunen and I had talked, and our hope was that we wouldn't need to do this because obviously our police officer wages have gone up significantly, and it was truly our hope and belief that was going to be adequate. Unfortunately, 10 months has gone by and we still have an opening, and we're now 5 months into the new year, 4.5 months into the new year, and we have not been able to get somebody hired. And it's the longer you go without anybody, the more difficult it is. This summer we'll have Corporal Nick Gunderson is obviously the school resource officer. On May 31st, he'll start working on shift. So our 1 opening that's on shift for the 3 months of the summer, he'll be filling that. That's going to absolutely decrease our overtime costs for the course of the summer. But that's a temporary fix because he'll be back in the schools come September. So if we were able to get this young man hired, he would at least be partially done with his training by the end of the summer, and sometime during the fall he would be completely completely trained and ready to fill that opening. And then you just hope we don't have any other openings in the near future. But it's kind of inevitable. 10 months is a long time for a department. Historically, police departments typically lose about 10% of their staff per year, which for us would be 2.3 officers. And we haven't lost anybody since, other than Lieutenant Hychek retiring, we haven't lost anybody for about 2 years.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Let's start the discussion then. We'll start with Councilmember Riopel.
We kind of went through this, those of us that were on the negotiating committee with the unions. We did increase the entry level from a level 1 to a level 3, which increased approximately, we say $5,800 a year, something like that, to help offset this particular item. Personally, I'm not for it. That's my call because I think we already addressed it. The other thing is, are we sure that Gunderson will be back in the school next year?
Next year, yes. The school has assured us that he'll be in there for next year. 27-28 school year, that remains to be seen.
I'd like to be at their meeting right now because I think they're meeting to discuss some of these items, plus a lot more at the school district.
I don't think met last night, I guess.
Was that? I thought it was the 12th.
I wish Corporal Rue was still here because he actually presented on
had a meeting yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
It is the 12th, yeah. So, but yeah, I think we've addressed it. I know it's going to be a problem no matter what we do. We're never going to keep up to the State Highway Patrol.
No,
they're funded way beyond what we could ever imagine. But some of the smaller towns are a lot less than us, too.
Yes. As I stated, Mr. Huttunen and I both agreed that we thought it was worth trying without it.
Just my thoughts.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. I'm in the same boat as Mr. Riopel. We had extensive discussions during labor negotiations, and the MOU was one of the topics that we discussed, that we would retire the MOU and raise the starting wage of an officer. So really the only way that I could see that we could reinstate the MOU would be to decrease the starting pay, and that's just not something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I know overtime is quite the budget line item for the department. Is there ways that we can cut down on overtime and the savings can go into a fund that could help recruitment efforts?
We've adjusted our callback procedures for filling shifts as I think to the degree that I don't think we can do it any more than we do currently. We've tried a wide variety of different things. If it's a day shift, our minimum staffing is 2 officers on the street and 1 in dispatch. That we pretty much have to go to that. At nights, our standard minimum is 3, but after midnight we will go down to 2. That used to be after 3 in the morning we would go down till 2. We've pushed that back to midnight and shortened that midnight shift overtime down to, I believe it's 6 at night to midnight. So it's down to basically half the cost of half the hours of a shift. So we have worked as best we could to the point where, in my opinion, any lower we'd be putting our officers at risk.
Okay. The only way that I could support something like this is if there was some really extensive cost-benefit analysis to the city that says, if we can hire an officer within X number of days, that's going to save the city this much in overtime.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense to have some sort of a hiring bonus like that.
And unfortunately, that's very difficult to do because when officers choose to take vacation or when they go to training, we have some control over, but they can take vacation basically as they see fit as long as it's within shift minimums. But if a shift is already at their minimum, which our C shift is right now, that's the shift that Corporal Gunderson will be going to for the summer, they're already at their minimum. You can't tell people you can't take vacation.
Right.
So
I guess
if somebody takes vacation, then we have to fill it out.
If we have that extra person, right, that can be there as basically like a float to cover these overtimes or vacations or whatever that are coming along. If there's an analysis that can be done we would need an accountant's touch to look at something like that, right? That says we hire someone on this day that will reduce the amount of overtime that these other officers work because they're covering someone's sick or someone's on vacation or someone's at training. If there's an analysis there that says if we hire that person, that will actually save the city X number of dollars, then that savings, I think, could go into like a recruiting fund to find a replacement instead of it being it's just $5,000, right? I think that's to me a way to look at it in terms of, you know, there's actual data behind this that says that, you know, if we do this, if we spend this $5,000 up front, it will actually save the city this much money long term over the summer through the end of the year. I could support something like that, but right now it's just we're just asking for money. So I think
understandable.
If there's some sort of analysis that can be done that actually has hard data behind it, I think it's something that I'd be willing to support in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tammy.
Is there a reason that we don't have like a dispatch position anymore?
We
like,
never have.
I thought back in the day there was like has it always been an officer?
The only time we've had a dispatcher was Sergeant Mike Swang had knee replacement surgery to both legs, and as an agreement with the city, we allowed him to serve as a permanent dispatcher until he retired.
Would that ever be a cost saving, like could you hire a dispatcher cheaper than a patrolman?
You could, but the problem with that is you would basically have to have a dispatcher for each shift, and that person still is going to need to be able to call in sick. They're going to need to take vacation. And so that's one of the reasons we've done it with officers. We just have it built in, and they do a rotation. We do train our 2 admin assistants to be able to serve as dispatchers as well. So they're fill-ins, even during the day, for example. If officers, if we're short for a few hours, an officer has to leave for a doctor's appointment or something, they'll fill in. Or if we have significant calls where that dispatcher also has to respond, that admin assistant will step in and fill in. So we have some cost savings there, but
I just think sometimes, like I see the sergeant sitting there, and it's like, is that the best use of his time? And he's the higher paid, and I don't know. So I thought maybe, you can't go into Polk County. Like, could they ever?
Well, it's been talked about repeatedly, but we've had this discussion probably 5 times in my time as chief, and I would argue vehemently against it. You would now have somebody doing your dispatching from Crookston that does not know East Grand Forks. You would wind up going to office hours of basically from 8 to 5. You could come into the PD and talk to an officer right away. Anytime after that, you're going to be calling Crookston, and you're going to be talking to them, and you're going to have to make arrangements for an officer to stop in and talk to you, whereas right now you can walk in and you're talking to an officer immediately. Anything from things like stolen bikes, we'd probably tell you to come back tomorrow.
It was just a thought for cost.
In my opinion, we're able to give a higher level of service both to our officers because of they're out there. For example, if they're working a 5-day week, they're working either 3 or 4 of those 5 days on the street, so they have an intimate knowledge of what's going on in the community. So they're better able then to dispatch our officers on their day that they're working in the desk than somebody that's 25 miles away in Crookston. I'm not taking anything away from those folks there. They're professional dispatchers. They do a very good job with what they're doing, but just the simple fact they're not in our town, I mean, there's a wide variety of factors that we've talked about.
It was just an idea to get another person on the street if we could hire.
The problem with any position is if you created a dispatch position, you'd have to have a relief factor. So are you going to have an on-call dispatcher that comes in on those days? Well, you're hoping you got somebody that's willing to come in and work part-time when they call in sick or whatnot. If you are going to try to do that with officers over the course of time, especially as technology changes, their skills are going to degrade if they're not in there on a regular basis. And if all of a sudden now they're only in, any given officer is only working dispatch once a month or once every 2 months versus once a week, they're not going to be very effective as dispatchers. So that's ultimately, for our current system, this is what works best.
All right. Okay, any further questions? Mr. Helms.
Yeah, one more. Chief, you mentioned a bunch of different colleges and stuff like that. The Lake Region College in Devil's Lake has a pretty nice deal. Is there an issue with North Dakota
Yep.
coming to Minnesota?
Devil's Lake is a year or less program. It does not meet Minnesota requirements. So if somebody had graduated from the Devil's Lake program and was working as a police officer in North Dakota for a number of years, they could eventually get to the point where they would be eligible. But just as a regular graduate, they would have to come over to Minnesota and go to school for probably at least another year.
Okay, that's what I want to know. And then my only thought on the $5,000 sign-on bonus, to me, the way I feel is that if it's going to take $5,000 for that person to decide if he wants to work in East Grand Forks or not, if that's the only deciding factor in it, to me it sounds like he's probably not going to stay here very long if that's what he's after, just the money. I mean, if he's just after that sign-on bonus.
He hasn't told me that he will not come for this.
Right.
He just asked if anything was available, and I said I would ask.
Yeah, understandable. I mean, that's
Right now, it's a seller's market as a law enforcement officer. If you're a quality candidate, I guarantee you everybody on our staff could have a job in 2 or 3 weeks making significantly more than they are if they chose to move to the Twin Cities. Now, they have to move to do that, and thankfully we have people that, for the most part, are quite happy with our department in the city and they're working where they want to work. But knock on wood, hopefully it stays that way.
But then the risk goes up too.
There's give and take with everything. Absolutely. Yep, give and take with everything.
So, what would this do to what would this do to the other officers that offered $5,000 for this guy?
For officers in the future, you mean?
Well, the ones that are working now today.
The last 5 that we've hired all got this.
Because we bought the ones we have already.
We had to work, well, the hiring bonus did not.
Yeah.
Depending on where they were hired, depending on when they came in with experience, we have to make sure that they fit into the scheme of officers with a relevant amount of experience. This particular officer doesn't have any officer candidate. He's a student coming straight out of college, so he would be coming in at our bottom pay, which, as Mr. Reid pointed out, that's step 3 at this point. So, yeah, that's just, our last 5 officers all received the $5,000 hiring bonus, but we've hired those folks between 2023 and 2025, so the last 5 all received it. But as was discussed, our pay is significantly better than it was during that time frame.
All right. Any further discussion here? Okay. All right. Let's keep moving on then. Reid, I guess what's the next steps here? Chief, hold up 1 sec. I think I got ahead of myself. Did you hear what you need? With this kind of unique situation with no vote last week, what is the next step here?
I'm glad you asked that.
I can tell.
I mean, there's 2 options. It's one, we just take the discussion as we heard it tonight, and we maybe, to Mr. Pokshavinsky's request, contemplate how we can run some cost analysis. That doesn't do much to give Chief Edlin's candidate an immediate answer. The other option would be put it on the agenda next week for a vote. I'd be curious where you all feel for direction on that. I'll say, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but I'll say, like, if the consensus in this room is that you're not in favor of it, I think it probably does our department more harm as far as the optics of recruiting the next new officer. If we vote it down next week, then it does just kind of leave it left unsaid and keep working forward.
Sure.
I would agree. It also delays the time frame for this officer candidate. If you folks are of the opinion that you're not going to approve this, I would rather be talking to him tomorrow and saying it wasn't approved. Are you still interested in coming here? And basically getting him to make a decision now rather than delaying that for another full week, which gives those other agencies that much more time to get their hooks into him.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's probably a good rationale to follow that second thread and look into a deeper analysis, maybe reflecting back on the last 10 months of being 1 officer short, the expenses of overtime compared to bringing on a new officer. I think what Ben had mentioned is worth the effort and the time. And there is no program in place at the moment. So, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I think we move forward and say that there's not one in place. And I would encourage any department to have some sort of analysis that says that can decide whether or not it's good to make a hire, just a hire to be able to fill those shifts, or, can the city afford the overtime and save money? Not saying that I want officers to work overtime, because we don't want to overwork them as well. But the cost-benefit analysis of things in terms of recruiting will be helpful here for the future. I think in this one instance, I think I'm at a no, but in the future, I think it's still something that we should continue to review for the next hire that we know will happen. So, thank you.
All right. Okay. Any further conversation? Okay. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Let's move on to item number 10 then. Request to declare story time table surplus. Ms. Anderson and Mr. Huttunen.
I'll just leave it to Ms. Anderson. Welcome to the City Council work session.
Hey, this is my first time, so if I get it wrong, please provide feedback. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I would like to propose that we declare our story time room tables surplus. They are child-sized tables that we have already replaced, that we have raised the funds to purchase new, more inclusive tables, and therefore we have 6 story time tables that our library board has already voted to mark as surplus, and so we're just requesting that you all do the same, so then we can get those out of the library. They are currently stacked in our mechanical room, and we would like that space back, and so we don't have a use for them and would like to be able to get them out of our space.
Great. Thank you.
Works for me.
Any questions? Okay.
Selling, donating, throwing.
Would you like child-sized tables?
No.
Would you like to
There's a cleanup next week. You can't get rid of them.
No, but if anybody wants some, they can probably contact the library.
Yes, we have kind of, from what Charlotte has explained to me, we've put some feelers out there that in the past when we have gotten rid of some of these child-size furniture pieces, that we've reached out to schools or daycares or churches to try to see if they could use them, because they're expensive to purchase and they are very functional. They didn't work in our storytime space unless we needed to replace them. We have not gotten any feedback on someone who is looking, but if you know someone in schools or in daycares that would like these types of tables, that honestly we would gift them, or if it's some free will donation or something, that they're just taking up space at this point. So. The community.
Send a picture? Like, do you have a picture of what they look like?
Oh, that's a great question. I will take one. Yes. Would you like me to send it to the city council then, or just?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. They are, from what I understand, they're up in a kind of a V formation because they're big and cumbersome to put down. Is it okay if I send it in that kind of? You can see them. They stack nicely for storage. So, okay.
That'd be great.
Perfect.
Great. Okay.
I'd like to see Mr. Stordahl sit at one.
Yeah, I'd pay to see that too.
He could be our model tables. All right.
All right. Thank you, Lacey. I think we're good. All right. We'll move on to item number 10. Request to hire Mr. Richard Kramchuk for mechanic opening. Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President, Council. So the City Council authorized staff to initiate the hiring process to fill a vacancy that we had from retirement last summer. We've advertised a few times now. Civil Service was able to get 2 candidates in to interview and passed on to us. We've selected Mr. Kramchuk for the position. He has some pretty good experience working on trucks and heavy equipment. We feel he'd be a good fit for our Public Works Department. The position is a budgeted position within the city's 2026 budget, and Mr. Kramchuk would start at a step 1 in the grade 13 mechanic. And I'm just asking for approval to hire at next week's council meeting.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Any questions for Mr. Stordahl? Go ahead, Dale.
He's the previous mechanic elsewhere right now, or?
Yes. Right now.
I mean, you don't have to tell me where. I just wondered if he was.
He was at 2 different positions.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then he's going to be the basically the assistant mechanic then, right? Or the,
We don't really have an assistant or a senior, but
okay.
basically it'd be less junior coming into it, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, I think we're good. Thank you, Jason. And if you'll stick around for item number 12 is a request to award annual sewer cleaning contract to Pipe Detectives, Inc.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President and Council. This one is something that we do every year. It was put into place in 2011 as a preventative maintenance. We do a fifth of the city, which is really more like a fourth of the city because there's some problem areas that we do every year. This year it happens to be, the area happens to be north of 17th Street, plus the troubled areas. There'll also be a little bit of footage added to that because we're taking a look at our sanitary sewer along Business Highway 2 to see what we might need to replace when they do the Highway 2 overlay and reconstruction project. We got 3 different quotations. The low being Pipe Detectives at $136,336, and Pipe Detectives have been one of the vendors that have been very good to us in the past. They're very reliable and do a good job. So, just asking for authorization to award them the contract.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Stordahl on the annual sanitary sewer cleaning? Okay, I see none. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And then last item here, item 13, request to award LED lighting replacement at the VFW Memorial Arena. Mr. Huttunen.
All right, thank you, Council. At the VFW Arena, in the building maintenance fund for our 2026 budget, Mr. King, when he was here, budgeted $45,000 for LED lighting replacement in the main arena space. This is, as we were working through the project scope on the sales tax improvement projects, it was kind of identified as an area that was going to be left out of the scope with all the mechanical and ice arena improvements happening. So he did seek a price, requested quotes on the improvement of the LED. I did provide that to you kind of as a printout on your desk when you got here tonight. 2 different quotes, with the low quote being Eagle Electric at $37,868 to do that work. We are estimating with water and light an anticipated $7,000 rebate once this project is completed. And Eagle Electric indicated when they gave me this quote that they would bill on time and material, so if they can do the job for cheaper than quoted, that it'll be done at the lesser price of the 2. And indicated that June 1st there's a 7% price increase on materials, so that's part of the timeliness of trying to get the approval and the materials ordered before the end of the month. So seeking approval on that quote.
Okay, thanks, Reid. Any questions for Mr. Huttunen? Okay, I see none. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda for today's work session. I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Helms.
Second.
Second by Riepel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Opposed. Thank you, everyone.